Hi, this is Liz Coley. Welcome back to Undercover Reading. We're reading The Captain's Kid, Chapter 8, Part 11. Dad prodded me from behind. Go on. A small figure embracing Masuna separated and stepped toward the ramp. I stared in puzzlement, in total confusion. She was familiar. She was... Mom! My legs closed the distance at record speed, and I grabbed her with all my strength. My eyes squeezed closed. She held me even tighter, shaking with emotion. The cloud of her familiar scent surrounded me, and I breathed it in deeply, and I understood Dad's weirdness. He'd found out. He'd raced to be with her. Everything else forgotten, even me forgotten for a moment. Of course, it made perfect sense. You survived! You survived! I whispered. I can hardly believe it. Dad joined in the group hug, laughing semi-hysterically. Mom pulled back first, surveying me head to toes. I must say, Gordon told me how tall you've grown, but still I wasn't expecting this. I laughed semi-hysterically myself, and here I thought you had shrunk. Looking down at her, it was a whole new perspective. Her face was subtly different, thinner than the one I remembered, and it was darker, tighter, and more serious. She was totally familiar and remarkably strange at the same time. 4.5 years. A long time for her. Even longer for me. Dad wore a silly grin plastered from ear to ear. I guess it matched mine. A long time for him, too. Come on, boys, let's get inside the air conditioning. She headed for the nearest cluster of buildings. My face was already beading with sweat. One of the Sequoiano greeters had a stack of woven yellow straw hats in his hand and passed them out to the newcomers. With shade on my face, the temperature dropped 5 degrees or more. Gravity was just a touch stronger than Earth normal, and I pulled against the tug with each step I took. I was glad to reach the air-conditioned building, till I realized the conditioning was relative. Inside was about 30 degrees, still stifling hot to me. If this is what Masuna was adapted to, she must have frozen the whole way here. Mo gripped his father's hand with a fierce smile, and I winked at him, enjoying the miracle we now shared. Dad handed each of us a drink from the cooler next to the entrance. It disappeared in a gulp, but I didn't ask for more, knowing how precious water was. Dad dropped his cup into a box for re-sterilizing. Boys, I hate to do this to you, but we're going to have to leave you to explore for a bit. Anna's son will show you around. She and I have to begin planning. What about Mom? I asked. Can she come with us? I didn't want to lose track of her, not after all this. Sorry, Brandon, we need her. She's part of the planning team. Well, of course, she had priorities. Right, got it, I said. So, Mom, did Dad tell you all about how he picked New Hope? Mom threw Dad a puzzled look. New Hope? Gordon? Dad glared at me with a tiny headshake. He pointed to the elders with his eyes. Not now, Brandon. Let us handle this. He called, Tonio, we're ready, to one of the Sequoianos. So Anna's son, Tonio, was an adult, of course. She had grandchildren, maybe his daughters. I shook hands with him automatically, but my attention was on Mom and Dad, whispering frantically in a corner. Mom's voice rose a notch. But that's impossible, ridiculous! And moments later, never agree! From a distance, I couldn't hear who would never agree with what. She didn't look pleased, though. With a chilled feeling that had nothing to do with the feeble air conditioning, I followed Tonio and Mo into the squinty bright sunlight and heavy air. Tonio took us through the settlement for about an hour along the unpaved streets, past so many homes abandoned and falling apart. The central district was more lively, filled with shops selling handcrafts, others selling dried peppers and spices, several selling large insects and grubs that made up much of their dietary protein. The high spot of the tour was the school. Undercooled for sure, but filled with happy, skinny Sequoiano kids tapping away on their portable compads. Every doorway Mo and I passed, all the heads came up, eyes wide, and lipless mouths dropped open like capital O's. I waved to the astonished kids and said, I'm Brandon. See you soon. In one classroom, a boy hollered, Hey, you're middleman. I'm Lumberjack. You sold me a chainsaw. I bowed to him, just like my shopkeeping avatar would. Humbly at your service. And what fine goods are you searching for today? The kids burst out in giggles, like totally normal kids. Tonio dropped us outside the council room. where the meeting was still in session. From the overlapping shouting voices inside, I could tell things weren't going well at all. A woman was yelling, "A decision of this magnitude based on a child's research project. Have you lost your mind?" And a male voice answered too quietly to understand. Then Masuna's voice rose over the hubbub, "Saw his heart in his eyes," and I knew she was speaking of Whitesinger. The strident voice went on, "Just one example. You knew it wouldn't be easy when you—" And more competing voices joined the fray. "No connection to the so-called New Hope. Losing our way and our souls, Anna. What about the 50 babes born this year? Never should have allowed. Better to stay and die than—" I listened in horror, my vision blurring. I gasped, "It's not supposed to be like this." Mo touched my arm. "Steady, Brandon. They'll work it out. It's just a shock to them. Trust your father and Ambassador Manybeads." "I can't. I have to tell them." I opened the door, one hand still to the latch, and entered just in time to hear that hard woman's voice. "A planet chosen by children! Quarantine, no less! That's just insane, Gordon! How could you let yourself be led so far off course?" Dad's head faced the door, and he recognized me through the crack. I hadn't tried to be stealthy. He frowned and said, "This is not your place, Brandon." "But, Dad," I said weakly, "I heard—" Then that same hard voice cut me off. "Gordon, I wish you'd had the sense to say that before the child got involved in this." And when I looked around the room in shame, I realized it was Mom, my mom, calling me the child. Mo hauled me away from the door, closing it firmly, but without a slam. "We do not need to hear any more of this," he said. "Come." My throat was too tight to breathe. All the life was running out of me through a gaping hole in my chest. The part of my heart that knew that my mother loved me was in shreds, and everything else leaked out around that rupture. Mo clamped my bowed shoulders and forced me to make eye contact. His face swam through my tears. "Brandon, focus. Listen to me. It's still a good plan. You have to give them time. Remember, it's not your future, it's theirs. They have to own the hope. The captain and the ambassador have to convince them to buy it." "But I could—" "No, you can't, Brandon. You've already done your part. This isn't your time now. They don't know you." As he released them, my shoulders slumped even more. My head throbbed. I don't know what to do." "Let's find where you're staying tonight." He was brusque and businesslike. I was terminally depressed. "How do we do that?" "Ask anyone around here where the Earthers live." Of course, thanks, Mo." His calmness helped. My pulse was down to 140 or so, and maybe the ache between my temples wasn't the fatal stroke I was hoping for. Dang, it's so weird. "Yeah, it is." "What?" "To think of them living here for 4 years with no way of sending back word that they were okay." "Must have been very frustrating," Mo said. "No kidding. Why didn't your mom come down on the shuttle too?" He shrugged. "I don't know." I smiled limply. "Then you get to be the first one to tell her. That'll be amazing." With the help of a curious bug seller, we were directed toward the medical clinic. Mo's dad's house was right next door, and Mom's was the one beyond that. We went into the doctor's place first, found some juice in the cooler, and hung out wondering if anyone would come for us. We just made a plan to raid the food cupboards when Mo's dad arrived. "Brandon, your parents are home next door," he informed me. "Thanks, sir. I'll go over there, I guess. Bye, Mo." "Hang in there, Band-Aid," Mo offered. "It'll be okay." I tossed him a thumbs up, but my heart wasn't in it. Mo's dad grabbed Mo in a hug and whirled him around. "Oh, my son, I've missed you so. You've no idea." I closed the door gently behind me, leaving them in peace. I stared at Mom's door, wondering whether to knock, like a stranger, or walk right in, like a son. And I decided to knock. Dad had the door open before my knuckles hit the third time. He grabbed and squeezed my hands. "I'm so sorry, kiddo. It's the process. You weren't supposed to hear any of what goes on behind closed doors. It's been far worse in the past, trust me. It'll all come right, you'll see." Why did everyone have this blind faith that things would turn out all right on their own? Someone had to make them turn out right. Make them with all his or her strength. I guess I would have to trust Dad to be that person. Thanks, Dad, I whispered. I hope so. Over his shoulder, I could see most of the tiny house at a glance. It was warm and homey. The table was set with 3 woven straw placemats, 3 matching ceramic plates and cups, and a bowl of fruit. Mom had her back to us, stirring the contents of a large black bowl next to a hot, flat grill. She peeked back, opened her mouth to speak, then turned away, changing her mind. My heart dropped a notch in my chest. What had gone wrong? This was supposed to be an ecstatic, wonderful, happy reunion like next door. So why did I feel like I'd woken up in the wrong reality? What was I supposed to do anyhow? Make the first move, I suppose. I walked up behind Mom, put my arms around her neck, and kissed the top of her head. She gave an awkward laugh. I don't know if I can get used to that, she said. Last time I saw you were only up to here on me. She pointed to a freckle on her neck. She was stiff, and my arms dropped of their own accord. Can I help? That's what kids were supposed to say to their mothers, wasn't it? She handed me 3 peach-sized balls of dough from under a moist cloth. Can you please flatten these for me? About yay thick. She held her hands about a centimeter apart. While I shaped the dough, she poured 6 flat cakes onto the oiled grill. They sizzled while she heated a bowl of black beans in the microwave. Dad poured amber juice into the cups on the table. Mom slid 2 brown flat cakes onto each plate and topped them with the steaming black beans. Looks great, Mom, I said like a good son. What is it? Corn and green chili egg fritters with frijoles. Or that's how it sounded. All vegetarian, I asked. We don't have any mammal meat in the settlement, and I can't say I've acquired a taste for insects. No, that's perfect. I'm vegetarian too, I assured her. I didn't know that, she said, shooting my dad a glare. Gordon didn't warn me about that either. Dad dropped his eyes and I jumped into the silence. That's okay, Mom. It's very recent. Besides, I'm sure you had much more important things to say to each other. What was it like, Dad? What happened when you landed and found out Mom was still alive? Did you freak out? Was it the greatest thing ever? Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't interpret, but it wasn't the one I expected. I babbled on. He never had one girlfriend, not ever, Mom, because all that time he hung out with Miss Jan could have been perfectly innocent. Must have been, knowing Dad. Bet you're glad about that, Dad, huh? Dad put down his fork. There was that weird look between them again. What was it? Dad broke the silence before I could dig a deeper hole for myself. It wasn't a total surprise, Spidey. Oh, of course. I bet you already found out on the ship when we were coming in. Yeah, when you made radio contact. Is that why you were so wacky lately? Mom jumped in. Brandon, he's always known. Those were the mission parameters. What was she talking about? What parameters? Dad put a hand on mine. My fork was shaking. I couldn't tell if it was my hand or his causing it. Remember when we talked about top secret? He asked. What parameters? I insisted. Your mother and Mo's father were the forward team, dropped to prep the Sequayunos for leaving. And they crashed, I insisted, and miraculously survived. Dad shook his head, his brow deeply ridged. No, Brandon, there wasn't a crash. They brought emergency nutritional supplements. They stabilized the children's health. They prepared relocation plans with the elders. They negotiated a peace agreement with the Pescados. They educated the people about living on planet Earth. And they kept the colony focused on the goal. This has been their job for the last 4 years. I couldn't believe my ears. Then why did you let me and Aunt Amanda and everyone else think? Why? My voice had the whine of a 4-year-old. That's what top secret means, honey, Mom said. No one was allowed to find out that the retrieval was being planned. We weren't even sure it was going to be authorized. But I was just a little kid. Who would I have told? Dad looked at me with those huge sympathetic eyes. I'm sorry. So sorry, Brandon. Those were my orders. You don't know how they broke my heart. I pushed back my chair and leapt up from the table. The chair crashed to the floor behind me. Excuse me, your heart? You don't know how they broke my heart. I was 10. I've been in mourning for 4 years for nothing. And you tell me it was orders? Are you guys insane? Mom reached toward me. Honey, I know you... Know me? I shouted in her face and slapped her hand away. "You don't know me at all!" I spun toward the door and yanked it open. The wind blasted me, instantly drying my eyes as fast as they filled. The salt stung. I ran from the house, mindlessly escaping. No particular goal in mind, just running till my lungs were bursting from the hot air. In the distance, the shuttle shimmered through the heat waves. It looked like a haven. It looked like home. Dripping with sweat, I jumped up and down in front of the cockpit. The boarding ramp was withdrawn and the hatch closed, but someone had to be inside. The systems were still running. Finally, the hatch cracked and I spilled up the ramp and collapsed inside. "What's orders?" the pilot asked. "You going back tonight? I thought it was the other boy." Was it that easy? "Nope, it's me. Take me up," I said. Mo wouldn't mind, not at all. My chest heaved, gasping to make up my oxygen debt. "Radio," the pilot said. "Buckle up." We lifted, and the farther we got from the planet, the easier I breathed. My sweat dried in the cool, circulating air. My body returned to equilibrium. I sat in the shuttle, the roar of engines at my back, and took stock of my life. 1. My plan to save the Sequeunos had been mocked and torn to shreds by my own mother. 2. My miracle reunion was a farce. 3. The most honest person in my entire universe turned out to have been lying to me for years. So much for reliable. So much for counting on Dad. 4. My parents had sold out my childhood to some nameless, faceless officials. There were probably more if I thought about it. Nothing made sense anymore. It was like they'd cut my safety line and pushed me off to drift into space. What could I hold on to? Where was my anchor? Karthik. An island of sanity. I sent him a message, coming home early. I rested my head in my arms, eyes scrunched tight, in a total state of collapse. Hypnotic patterns of light flickered across the insides of my eyelids. I studied their randomness. It kept the dark thoughts away. When we docked, I thanked the pilot and retreated to my cabin. It wasn't long before the nightmare started. A wild mixture of shuttle crashes and knife fights and dying Sequeuno children keeling over with their ribs showing. Probably the worst night I've ever spent. Something tickling my face startled me awake. It was daylight, but my alarm hadn't sounded, or maybe that was the emergency siren in my dream. Mo stood over me, brushing a straw hat across my forehead. "You stole my ride, Band-Aid, and you left your hat." I blinked hard. "What? How? You're in my room." "I let him in," Karthik said. "He warned me you might have sunstroke. Or something." I sighed. Something all right. Terminal disillusionment. "Did he tell you, Mo, your dad, that it was all a ruse?" Mo nodded. "Seems an awfully high price to pay." "You don't sound furious," I said. "What's wrong with you?" "Karth, our parents lied to us brutally. For 4 years, they let us think the other parent was dead. It explains a lot now. No funeral, no grief counseling, refusing to talk about it. An awfully high price. And why did we, me and Mo, have to pay it?" Karthik didn't answer. I went on. "My parents are idiots if they think they can wipe out those 4 years of agony. Don't you think, Mo?" He sounded resigned, calm even, as he said simply, "They can't. No one can. But look at it this way, as it was offered to them. Your choices are to save a people in secrecy, or refuse the mission and let them be wiped out. What would you choose?" I stared at him. He already knew the answer. "Brandon, my father told me the choice was clear to him. They arrived. They saw the devastation. They counted the fresh graves. He knew he had to do it. Stay behind and help until rescue could be arranged. Hoping rescue could be arranged. That was the risk they took, that they'd never even get a rescue ship approved. That's what he told me." That added some perspective. Oh, dang. They didn't even know how long it might be. Mo shrugged. "Nope, they sure didn't. And your mom and my father volunteered anyway. He said he trusted that we would be together in the end and that I would be old enough to understand and forgive him." "Did you? Do you?" "Forgive him? Of course. I'm proud of him. Having him alive is more than I ever dreamed of. I'll count every day I have him now as a gift. He planted a hand on my shoulder. And when he's annoying the heck out of me, you can remind me of that, okay? I smiled weakly. I'll remind you, if you'll do the same for me. Karthik clasped both our hands. Very good, very good. See, I told you everything would work out in the end. No problem. I slid out of bed, still in my clothes from yesterday. Yeah, there is. Anger, betrayal, sadness all gnawed at me. But stronger still was the fear, the worry that all our careful work had been for nothing, that no one would speak for New Hope the way we could. The elders hate the plan, and it doesn't help one bit that my mom is against it. Karthik's face fell. Is this true, Mo? Mo rolled his shoulders as if they ached. I have to admit it didn't look good when I left. They were heading into another meeting, and what I accidentally heard through the door wasn't promising. Your mom's a tough one in a fight, Brandon. Well, that's just dandy if she's on your side, I said, but right now it's killing me. She wouldn't even listen to me. She called me a child. Karthik pursed his lips. Well, technically I'd be considered an adult on Esperanza. They'd listen to... Holy smokes. I have an idea. Get online now. Like the bed was on fire, everyone jumped. What are we doing, boss? Karthik asked. We're playing Frontier World, I said. Get everyone on and meet at my general store at the crossroads of Prairie's Edge and Milkweed Lane. Scoop up anyone you see in the game and bring them with you. They vanished at my order. I flipped the bed, entered the game, and began to search for Lumberjack. When I found him, here's what I would say. Humbly at your service? And what fine goods are you searching for today? I hear you're in the market for a new planet. Let me tell you what I can offer. Please come back for the next reading.